All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this special episode of the Local Focus webinars. My name is Yordi. I'm one of the founders of the company Local Focus, and I'm a data-driven journalist as well. And this is a special webinar because most of the time we do these kind of sessions in Dutch, and we talk about Dutch subjects or about things in Dutch. But this is a special collaboration with EDJN, also known as the European Data Journalism Network, and it's all about finding stories in European data. And in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to guide you through different data sources, and I've got some handy tools and tips and tricks which maybe helps you finding interesting European data on a national level and even on a regional level. So let's go. I'm going to share my screen now because I've got loads of practical tips and tricks. So finding stories in European data. For the ones who don't know Local Focus, we're a company from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and we develop two different things. One of them is a platform where you can easily make data visualizations such as maps and graphs, in just a few mouse clicks, and loads of news outlets in Netherlands and the Netherlands and Belgium use the tool to make those graphics and interactive maps for news stories. So that's the technical part. Besides that, we also have our own newsroom, and we make data-driven stories of a broad range of statistics and subjects. I'm going to talk more about that. But be sure to check out localfocus.nl or localfocus.eu if you'd like to make graphics or maps yourself. So about Local Focus, because that's what we're doing. There's local in the name, and this is about European data. So what's going on here? Well, about our company, we are Local Focus, so we break down national data, mostly about the Netherlands, of course, into local statistics. So as you can see here on the map on the left, that's the Dutch number of unemployment rates, and we break those down to municipalities. Well, we make loads of different stories for our data-driven news service. I think it's approximately 5 a week. And as I said before, it's about a broad range of subjects. So crime statistics, economic statistics, about health, and of course about COVID-19 right now. And they have one thing in common, and that's it's all local or regional. So we work a lot with data, and for this special episode, I'd like to zoom out a little bit to think of the regional and the local part, but in a European sense. These are some sources we mostly use, and it's the Dutch Bureau of Statistics or police statistics here in the Netherlands. And we make those stories and graphics and maps based on that data. So that's the local part, but there are also loads of stories hidden in European data. And this webinar is about finding the relevant data, visualizing the relevant data, and how to, well, find your way to the loads of data sets that are around. Because the main source of statistics in Europe is Eurostat, the European Bureau of Statistics. And I've made a screenshot here of their homepage. You can see data about unemployment or about other European economic data as well. So that's Eurostat. And they make these kind of graphs on their website, for instance, about excess mortality, which is highly relevant now during COVID-19, but also about crime or crime survey statistics or all those kind of topics you can imagine. And they are mostly international, so on country level, which is very relevant, of course, if you're a journalist working in an EU country, but there's also some regional data even on an EU basis. So I'm going to tell you more about that in a bit. And that's great. But how do you find those interesting data sets? Because Eurostat is, well, they have a large database, loads of stories, but it can sometimes be tough to find the most speaking numbers. And one reason of that is that the large and sometimes not so user-friendly tables in Eurostat, well, are sometimes hard to find relevant data in it, and it can be quite tough. And if you look at the look and feel of those tables, it can be a bit old school. because in comparison, this is a screenshot I made of the Dutch Bureau of Statistics of their database, but it's made in 2012. So you can check out this look and feel. It's sometimes a bit outdated. Well, luckily I have some practical tips and tricks for you, so that you can get a grip on this data and know where to look. And the first tip I have is this data search engine, which is developed by the European Data Journalism Network. And what they did is fairly easy, but in my opinion, quite brilliant, because they made a Google for European data. So instead of having to browse the Eurostat or the European data portal by yourself, and as you saw, it's sometimes a bit old school to navigate through, the EDJN made this data search engine where you can just put a search term, for instance, marriage, which I did here, and check out all the data sets which are in the European data portal. And it's over 800,000, so there's a lot to get through. You can easily filter those data sets on category or theme or country. And what I especially like is the results here on the right, which are called record sets. And those are the larger data sets with statistics about all the different EU countries. So you have them all in one place. So the data search engine really helps me finding the way through the European data portal, which is a lot to navigate to. And this is just an easy interface. So the EDJN data search engine can really help you finding your way through the European data portal. So make sure to check that out. If you're not only into finding tables for your data stories, the Stats Monitor can help you. And a Stats Monitor is a collaboration between LocalFocus and the European Data Journalism Network. And what we did is the following. We select over 20 commonly used European data sets, mostly from Eurostat, but also other European sources. And we connected them to the LocalFocus platform, the data visualization platform. And the easy thing about that is that the data sets will be automatically updated over time. So if there are new statistics, it's already there in the platform, it get updated immediately. And a second thing is, if you're not really into browsing through all the tables, it's that the data is also immediately visualized in graphs and in maps. So on the right, you see some examples of those data sets. It's about unemployment, it's about passengers on airports or industrial data, and it's ready-made visualization you can use, you can embed them and even put them on your own site or download the data of the subset which is in the graph. And that's quite handy, because if you want to, well, for instance, let me show an example. If you're looking for corona cases per country, which is recorded by the ECDC, so it's the European government agency which collects these COVID-19 data, it's all there already in a line chart by country, and you can just make a selection of the time period you want to visualize. You can select different countries, for instance, Belgium and the Netherlands, as I did here. And we have more data, such as cases or deaths or hospital admissions, and it's all there already inside this visualization. And you can use them for your own story or your own site. We don't only do that with COVID-19 data, but also lots of economic data, such as income statistics, as you can see here. It's all data over a larger time period, and it can easily be a base of your story, or you can use the graph as context information for your own story. Unemployment rates is another example of data which is updated frequently and is also ready-made visualized in this platform. Of course, we're talking about Europe now, and I'm talking in English now, but I can imagine that if you're working for a French news outlet, for instance, these graphics have to be in your own language. And luckily, in the Stats Monitor, I've got a little screen recording here, is that the graphs are automatically translated as well. So as you can see, this is the unemployment graph in English. But if I select another language, for instance, French, you can see that all the labels inside the graphic are automatically adjusted to the language you selected. Same with Spanish, and I think it's over 10 other different languages. So even if you're not working for an Anglophone medium, or you're working in Dutch, as I normally do, all those graphics will be translated so you can easily use them. So the Stats Monitor collaboration between LocalFocus and EDJN with all those different graphics that are updated frequently already in the platform, and you can use them. The third thing I found is also with the Stats Monitor with EDJN together, and what I think is quite cool is that they do larger investigations, but it's not only about EU countries, but also about regions in the EU. And well, while the first example I showed you was focused on graphics, on charts, these kind of larger investigations are provided with automatically generated articles as well. So this is an example from last year, and it's made in collaboration with Newsworthy. It's a Swedish data-driven news outlet, and it's about excess deaths because of COVID-19. And what I really fancy about this production is that you can select your own region, for instance, the provinces in the Netherlands, and the article automatically adjusts the numbers and the visualizations inside the article for the regions in the Netherlands. So it's an easy way to compare your own regions, for instance, inside the Netherlands now, with regions in other EU countries. And it gives you a lot of context about certain newsworthy statistics, such as excess deaths here because of COVID-19. Whereas normally you only have data on a national level, or maybe regions in a certain country which are collected by a national statistics agency, for instance. But these kind of investigations that EDJN and Newsworthy did look at the broader picture. So all the regions in the EU, and you can select them yourself and maybe use it as a base for your own story. The fourth tip I have is about those regional EU data, because there is a large number of European statistics which are regional as well, but you have to search smart, because it can be quite tough to find the relevant data sometimes. And one thing I always keep in mind is the following. I always think about these kind of chocolate bars called nuts, and besides they're quite yummy, it's a little thing you have to keep in mind, because the term nuts is something Eurostat, for instance, used to register regional data. Okay, let's geo-nerd for a bit, because it's maybe a bit abstract now, but these are the different EU countries. You probably all know this map. But if we zoom in a little bit to nuts 1 regions, because it's always nuts with a digit behind it, it's the European countries, but in different regions. So in the Netherlands, it's called landsdelen, which are multiple provinces combined. And as you see, there are a lot of more borders now in Europe, but this is a quite handy region type you can use if you'd like to compare European statistics. We can zoom in a bit further, because as you can see here, there's nuts 2 regions are different provinces throughout Europe. So it's get way more regional as the nuts 1 regions. And in the Netherlands, it's provinces. I think it's arrondissement in Belgium, and it's called the Bundesländer in Germany. And if you combine all those different regions together, you get the full map of Europe. Well, just zoom in a little more. Why not? This is the nuts 3 regions. I had to make a different screenshot here, and I zoomed in a little bit. But even with this nuts 3 regions, you can sometimes even find cities or even smaller groups of municipalities for all of Europe. So you can zoom in quite much, and this is all just European data, but you have regional options as well. And that means that you can download regional statistics on an EU level. Well, as I've shown you some examples of those nuts regions. But the fun thing is that you can compare them on an international regional scale. All right. Then there's some theory about the nuts regions, but you have to find the fitting statistics with it. And one way to find those regional EU statistics is by checking out the Eurostat database. You have to know your way a little bit, because it's sometimes quite tough to find it all, but I made a screenshot here about the different folders they have. And just make sure you check out regional statistics by nuts classification. Those are the nuts regions again, think of the bars. And in these different folders, there are multiple data sets divided by team. So economic, education, health, tourism. And it's all regional data on an EU level. Another quite handy thing is to search for regional data in the database. By simply providing the term nuts in the search bar, you get all the different data sets with nuts in the metadata or in the title. And especially if you're a journalist, you want to have the most recent data first. So make sure you sort on publication date, as you can see here on the right, so that you have the latest data from the European database divided by those nuts regions. Here in this screenshot, I made it a short while ago. You can see the deaths by week. It's not really a nice topic, but it's very relevant now because of COVID-19. And it's a data set with all the different numbers of mortality rates in those NUTS3 regions for the different European countries. You can visualize on the map, for instance. This is a map I made about unemployment figures. And I know this data quite well because the Dutch Bureau of Statistics also publishes unemployment rates per region. This is provinces in the Netherlands, for instance. But by just checking out what Eurostat has over the whole of Europe, you can make these kind of international regional maps and compare how regions in the Netherlands, for instance, do it in comparison to neighboring regions, which are just across the border. And I think that's interesting because we have most of the time we journalists have a nationwide scope, but Europe is, of course, it's quite small. So why not look across the borders and think of what are the employment rates here and what are the employment rates in a neighboring region, which is just across the border. And it's quite easy to do that with those Eurostat data on NUTS region. So make sure you have some smart search options that I just presented so you can make those kind of maps and those kind of comparisons. And in my opinion, can broaden your view if you're working on data articles because it's not only regional on a national scale, but it's also regional on an international scale. Well, I have some last tips, tricks, and reminders for you. And the first thing is this, because I really like finding interesting stories in Eurostat data, but sometimes it's hard to know which are the most recent updated data sets. And make sure to check out the list with recent news reports, because I made a screenshot here on the left of all the latest news reports they made. And you can see on the right, there's a screenshot of data about EU tourism. But most of the time, there's more underlying data underneath it. And sometimes it's on a country level, but lots of times it's on a regional level as well. So you can maybe break down those tourism numbers for the different NUTS regions in the EU, for instance, and you can compare if there are interesting patterns, not only on a national level, but also on a regional level. So make sure you check out the latest news reports and browse a little bit in that data, because it's probably relevant because it's new data and that means a news lead. About the stats monitor, that is the connection of data visualizations from Eurostat in LocalFocus, which automatically updates. I can imagine that you're not going to log in the platform at F5 the whole time. So make sure you sign up for the mailing list or the RSS feed. And it's, as you can see on the screenshot here, it's divided in two different options. The first one are the data updates. So you get a sign when there's new data and a new visualization. So maybe that's a news lead for you as well. But you can also subscribe through something called news leads. And those are the articles we are automatically created with European, mostly regional, sometimes regional data, as I showed you with the excess mortality data production from last year. The last thing is this: if you'd like to visualize those regional EU data, if you found something through the data browser or the stats monitor or in the recent updates in Eurostat, you can do that in LocalFocus quite easily. If you have add a map layer in the platform, you can select one of those NUTS regions and automatically knows which shape is part of the region. So it's quite easy to visualize the data, as I, for instance, did with the unemployment rate. So make sure you check that out if you'd like to. Speaking of local focus, if you'd like to make your own data visualizations, graphs, maps, tables, make sure to make a free account. And you can, of course, make data visualizations of the nuts data, but also these kind of things on a country level or even more local. And it's all free. So make sure you check it out on localfocus.eu. That's it for now. Finding stories in European data. I think it's quite a interesting way to dive into data. It can sometimes be hard to find the most relevant data, but I think that with the tips I provided, well, I hope it helps you to find your way a little bit. And if you have other interesting data sources, make sure to let them know in the comments section, so we can help data journalists or other journalists finding interesting things inside these loads amount of European data. Thank you.